What can the plants tell you about how the irrigation system is working? The truth is, they can tell you a lot if you know what to look for. In this section, we'll learn how to do a visual walkthrough of the landscape before turning on the sprinklers. We'll look for obvious signs like plants that are too wet or too dry, weeds or pests that can hint at irrigation issues, and other evidence of water problems. And just as important, we'll talk about how to document what you see so you can connect these clues to possible irrigation system causes later. The tasks of a preventative maintenance review for the landscape condition from the irrigation service checklist are shown on the slide. We'll go more in depth on what you would see for each. When walking through a zone, we're looking for plants or turf that don't look healthy, and wet problems take time to show. So if you see these signs, they've probably been happening for a week or longer. Look for yellowish turf or plants, turf in shady areas that look worse than sunny areas, and soggy or soft ground. Mark or make a note of these spots because you'll want to pay close attention to these areas when checking the system's components later. Dry conditions show up fast, especially in turf and annuals. Look for wilting or curling leaves, turf with a blue or purplish tint, and footprints that stay visible for more than 5 minutes. Turf that feels or even sounds crunchy when you walk on it is another sign of stress. Patchy areas are also a big clue. Look at those lush green circles or half circles next to dead or dry spots usually mean uneven irrigation coverage. And if the turf is already brown, that tells you the drought stress has been going on for a while, or the grass may have gone into dormancy to protect itself. Weeds are great indicators of irrigation problems. They love areas where turf is thin or under stress, and the type of weed can tell you what's going on. If you see dollarweed, nutsedge, or annual bluegrass, that's a strong sign of too much water or poor drainage. On the flip side, weeds like goosegrass, spurge, dandelions, and plantains tend to thrive in dry or compacted soil. Pay attention to where you find dense weed patches. They often reveal areas with poor or uneven irrigation coverage. Pests and even fungi can give you a great clue about irrigation problems. In overwatered or poorly drained areas, you may see chinch bugs, algae, mushrooms, or other fungal growth taking advantage of wet, weakened turf. In contrast, dry, drought-stressed turf is a prime spot for mole crickets, and you may notice small ant mounds, which often pop up in dry, compacted soil. If pest or fungal damage forms irregular patterns, it often matches areas with poor or uneven irrigation coverage, the same stress zones that pests love. Before turning on the system, you may spot many irrigation problems just by walking the site and looking for evidence of water issues. Step on the turf. If the ground feels spongy or soft, that's a sign of leaks or overwatering. Standing water in low areas or washed out patches in turf and beds can also mean poor coverage or broken components. Check nearby hard surfaces too. Runoff stains on sidewalks, driveways, or other hardscape are strong indicators of overspray or poor system adjustment. And don't forget vertical surfaces. Water stains on fences or building walls can also point to misaligned heads spraying where they shouldn't. Here's an example of how to fill out the landscape conditions section of an irrigation service checklist. Most zones get marked OK if they look good, but if there are problems, you'll note them by number and type. For example, Zone 2 may say 3 wet for 3 overly wet areas, while Zone 3 could be marked 2 dry and note a dry-loving weed. For other issues, you might write 2 for water stains on a pool screen or 1 for a stain on a driveway, adding details like a spray nozzle found in the ground. If you fix something during the sprinkler review, mark it with a check mark in the same section. And here's the key. Always document what you saw and what you did. This not only gives value to the customer by showing the service performed, but it also provides a clear record for future maintenance. A record drawing, also called an as-built, is a huge time saver when reviewing irrigation systems. It shows the landscape areas for each zone and marks the locations of key components like sprinklers, zone valves, the backflow device, controller, and meter. The goal isn't to create a perfect blueprint. It doesn't need to be to scale. But for buried components, always mark distances from permanent landmarks like a building corner or driveway edge so they're easy to find later. For visible components, a simple icon is enough. And you can even use a printed satellite image to mark up the site instead of redrawing everything from scratch. The example shows all the major components placed for clarity, making it much easier for a technician to locate, service, and review the system efficiently and profitably. Let's wrap up with the big picture. First, plants will tell you a lot if you know what to look for. Yellow turf, wilting leaves, or crunchy grass all point to water stress. Weeds and pests are great detectives too. Certain species thrive in wet areas, others in dry, compacted spots. Also, keep an eye out for clear signs of water problems like soggy soil, stains, or runoff. Most importantly, document everything. Use your checklist to note problem areas and a record drawing to map out where components are. Good notes don't just make troubleshooting easier, they show the customer exactly what you did, which adds value and professionalism to every service call.